I, Andrew Withers, do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same.
As everyone knows, one of the few pleasures I have doing this radio show is destroying the credibility of the anti-gun lobby by making them look like the uneducated fools they are. I mean, it's like someone cloned Joe Biden to include the uneducated crap that comes out of his mouth. You'll have to excuse the sound quality. I think this was recorded on some cheap audio recorder at an NRA gun show.
Do you believe that banning certain weapons and high-capacity magazines will mean that law-abiding citizens will then become more of a target to criminals, as we will have no way to sufficiently protect ourselves?
Is this Parents Magazine?
It is.
I have Parents Magazine at home. I've never heard anybody in Parents Magazine ask these kinds of questions, but I'm delighted to answer them. First of all, the idea that, repeat the last part of the question, please.
So she's asking if a ban goes into effect on certain kinds of weapons and high-capacity magazines.
And what's her name?
Kate.
Kate, if you want to protect yourself, get a double-barrel shotgun, have the shells, a 12-gauge shotgun, and I promise you, as I told my wife, we live in an area that's wooded and somewhat secluded. I said, Jill, if there's ever a problem, just walk out on the balcony here or walk out, put that double-barrel shotgun and fire 2 blasts outside the house. I promise you, who's ever coming in is not going to, you don't need an AR-15. It's harder to aim, it's harder to use, and in fact, you don't need 30 rounds to protect yourself. Buy a shotgun. Buy a shotgun.
This guy is fucking stupid!
I believe that you should be able to defend yourself, but I really can't understand why people have to have their tanks, bazookas, AK-47s. On my rate, I have a friend that has a whole room of weapons. I don't, and you know what? He's not totally balanced.
With her statement on tanks, bazookas, who is really the unstable one? Someone who might own or collect firearms as a hobby, or someone who thinks the citizenry is rolling through the streets with bazookas and tanks? Credibility, -1.
I don't think they do a good enough job. I know that in the past, mostly men have gotten killed because they've needed mental help. Those right now, the way it stands, these are the only people that anybody can call. We cannot call mental health officials, and many times these police and law enforcement people are not equipped. You need education. Okay, you need to be highly trained, and they're not.
Here's an education. Women attempt suicide more than men, but fail. The reported difference in suicide rates for males and females is partially a result of the methods used by each gender. Although females attempt suicide at a higher rate, they are more likely to use methods that are less immediately lethal. Males frequently complete suicide via high mortality actions such as hanging, carbon monoxide poisoning, and firearms. This is in contrast to females who tend to rely on drug overdosing. While overdosing can be deadly, it is less immediate and therefore more likely to be caught before death occurs. In Europe, where the gender discrepancy is greatest, a study found that the most frequent method of suicide among both genders was hanging. However, the use of hanging was much higher in males, 54.3%, than in females, 35.6%. The same study found that the second most common methods were firearms for men and poisoning for women, although in many of those countries guns are banned. Methods of suicide are frequently correlated both with traditional gender roles and availability of different methods. Men are more likely than women to both use and own firearms, which could account for the higher rates of firearm death among males. In nations where firearms have been banned, there's a drop in male suicides via guns, but no change in females. Females tend to lean towards less lethal methods of suicide because of gendered ideas about attractiveness. Credibility, another -1. Total, -2. Since she's so worried about suicide, she might be interested to know that in Japan, where you can't get the smell of a gun, their suicide rate, with only 176 million people, is identical to ours at 21 per 100,000. Their preferred method of suicide, they like to jump in front of trains. We should ban trains.
Well, I think it's one of about 4 biggest lobbyists in this country, and I think that they work on fear, and it's a very, in a very subliminal way, they affect the people that are already fearful of being, that they're going to be attacked, that everything is very unsafe, and they have lots and lots of money by the weapons manufacturers to be able to buy politicians, and that's what they do. They buy politicians. So that is and it's not my feelings. That's kind of the reality of the situation.
Here's another lack of education about guns and the gun lobby. Let me explain where the money for the NRA comes from. Keep in mind, I'm not a member of the NRA. The NRA's annual lobbying budget is $800,000. Keep in mind, Nanny Bloomberg, the Big Gulp King, is spending $2.5 million annually. According to the NRA's 990 form filed with the IRS for 2010, they raised $23.4 million through memberships and the Roundup program, which I do participate in when I purchase parts or tools for guns. $21.2 million went for grants for education, training, range development, youth programs, and equipment. They support groups such as Boy Scouts of America, 4-H, law enforcement, competitive shooting groups, hunter education, gun collectors, and women's groups. The lobbying arm of the NRA also has a separate Roundup program started by the CEO of Midway USA. Guess where I buy my parts and tools. The NRA reported a total revenue of $227.8 million in 2010. Nearly half from members' dues, $110.5 million, $6.6 million from programs fees, and total contributions from gun manufacturers in 2010, $3 million. It would appear, unlike the government, the NRA is actually representing the people who pay them to represent them. Only a small contingent of the funds from gun manufacturers in comparison to the politicians who take more money from the drug industry every year than the NRA. Credibility, another -1. We're up to a total of 3 now.
Do you know what their annual lobby budget is?
I do not know. I really don't. I know it's in the billions.
Okay.
Credibility, based on the fact their budget is only $800,000, another -1. And we're up to 4 now. And what kills me is this is all public knowledge. It's all out there. But in the beginning of her rant, she mentioned that Americans were educated people. I'm finding it hard to believe she falls into that group.
I think absolutely. There's no reason why you cannot have background checks and registration of all arms that are out there.
First, let's take background checks and the fact they don't work. James Wright, formerly a gun control advocate, Wright received a grant from President Carter's Justice Department to study the effectiveness of gun control laws. To his surprise, he found that waiting periods, background checks, and all other gun control laws were not effective in reducing violent crime. Background checks do invite official abuse. A review of FBI computer records reveals that the firearms industry was shut down for more than 8 full business days during the first 6 months that the National Instant Background Check, or NICS, was online. Many of these shutdowns have resulted in virtual blackout of gun sales at gun shows across the country. According to gun laws expert Alan Corwin, With the NICS computer out of commission, the only place you could legally buy a firearm in the whole country was from a private individual, since all dealers were locked out of business by the FBI's computer problem. In the state of California, state officials have used the state background check required during the waiting period to compile an illegal registry of handgun owners. These lists have been compiled without any statutory authority to do so. It should be noted that's also against federal law.
If honesty was suddenly introduced into politics, it would throw everything off. The whole system would collapse. And I think deep down the American people know that. The American people like their bullshit out front, where they can get a good, strong whiff of it.
Anti-Gun Journal pronounces the failure of the Brady Law. One of the nation's leading anti-gun medical publications, the Journal of the American Medical Association, found that the Brady registration law had failed to reduce murder rates. In August 2000, they reported that states implementing waiting periods and background checks did not experience reductions in homicide rates or overall suicide rates. Brady checks are not taking criminals off the streets. Not every person who is denied a firearm is truly a criminal. As many persons have been denied erroneously, but even assuming each denial was legitimate, the Brady Law is still not taking criminals off the street and thus keeping them from getting firearms. The Washington Times reported that in 1999, that although federal officials say about 400,000 persons had been prevented from buying guns by the instant check system, only one had been prosecuted by the Department of Justice in the last 3 years. The Brady Law has not stopped thugs like Benjamin Smith from going on killing sprees. In 1999, Benjamin Smith was rejected by a background check when he tried to buy a firearm from an Illinois gun dealer. But after his initial rejection, he hit the streets and in just 3 days had 2 handguns from an illegal source, reported the Associated Press. 3 days after getting the guns, Smith went on a rampage that killed 2 people and wounded 9 others. The Brady Law is not physically keeping criminals from getting firearms. The simple truth is that any person who's denied a firearm can simply walk out the door and buy a gun down the street. Ohio's Attorney General Betty Montgomery testified to this very irony in the law in 1997. In 1996, 60,037 people went to licensed gun dealers to purchase handguns. Of that figure, 327, less than 0.5%, were denied because of disqualifying factors. While we were able to keep 327 people from getting a handgun at point A, each of them was able to purchase a rifle or handgun the very same day at point B. To our knowledge, under the Brady Act, not a single one of the 327 people have been prosecuted by the U.S. Justice Department. Criminals bypass gun controls. A Justice Department survey of felons showed that 93% of handgun predators had obtained their most recent guns off the record, and press reports show that the few criminals who get their guns from retail outlets can easily get fake IDs or use surrogate buyers known as straw purchasers to buy their handguns. Legal gun shows are not a problem. Some have demonized gun shows and claim that these are the outlets where criminals supposedly get their weapons. But the Clinton Justice Department found that less than 2% of the people arrested for using firearms in a homicide got their weapons from gun shows. The Department of Justice has grossly overstated the number of people who are denied firearms. The Indianapolis Star and News reported in 1998 that the U.S. Department of Justice had overstated the number of people who were denied firearms in Indiana alone by more than 1,300%. Indiana was not an aberration, as the newspaper found that paperwork errors and duplications inflated the Department of Justice's numbers in many states. As a veteran, I have to say, you mean the government loses and screws up paperwork? Duh! The General Accounting Office questions the Brady Law's supposed effectiveness. The Brady Law has failed to result in the incarceration of dangerous criminals. After the first year and a half, there were only 7 successful prosecutions for making false statements on Brady handgun purchase forms, and only 3 of them were actually incarcerated. Because the situation hardly improved in subsequent years, one cannot argue that the law is working to keep violent criminals from getting handguns on the street. The Brady Law has erroneously denied firearms to thousands of applicants. Over 50% of denials under the Brady Law are for administrative snafus, traffic violations, or reasons other than felony convictions. Gun control advocates admit the Brady Law is not a solution. According to a January 1996 report by the General Accounting Office, proponents of gun control acknowledge that criminal records checks alone will not prevent felons from obtaining firearms. Criminals can easily evade the background checks by using straw purchasers. Opponents of gun control note that criminals can easily circumvent the law by purchasing handguns on the secondary market or by having friends or spouses without a criminal record make the purchase from dealers. Now let's talk about registration. Her credibility is pretty much in the dirt. In the mid-1960s, officials in New York City began registering long guns. They promised they would never use such lists to take away firearms from honest citizens. But in 1991, the city banned and soon began confiscating many of those very guns. In 1992, a New York City paper reported that police raided the home of a Staten Island man who refused to comply with the city's tough ban on assault weapons and seized an arsenal of firearms. Keep in mind, this person had not committed a crime until they penciled the law, making him a criminal. Spot checks were planned for other homes. So much for the Fourth Amendment. The Golden State passed a ban on certain semi-automatic firearms in 1989. Banned guns could be legally possessed if they were registered prior to the ban. In the spring of 1995, one man who wished to move to California, why he would want to do that, asked the Attorney General whether his SKS Sporter rifle would be legal in the state. The citizen was assured the rifle was legal, and based on that information, he subsequently moved into the state. But in 1998, the state's Attorney General reversed course and officials confiscated the firearm. In a legal brief before the state Supreme Court, Attorney General Daniel Lundgren said that tens of thousands of California citizens would have to either surrender their firearms or become felons. Having registered the firearms, the California Department of Justice issued a notice in 1999 to explain how more than 1,500 individuals in the state were in possession of illegal firearms, all of which were subject to forfeiture without compensation. Plans to confiscate firearms in California were leaked to the public in 1999, sending shockwaves through the gun rights community. The document entitled Relinquishment of Assault Weapons stated, once the 90-day window of opportunity for turning in such assault weapons concludes, we will send each sheriff and police chief a listing of the affected individuals who own banned firearms. Gun registration has led to confiscation in several countries, including Greece, Ireland, Jamaica, and Bermuda. And in an exhaustive study on this subject, Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership has researched and translated several gun control laws from foreign countries. Their publication, Lethal Laws, Gun Control, is the key to genocide. Documents how gun control and confiscation has preceded the slaughter and genocide of millions of people in Turkey, the Soviet Union, Germany, China, Cambodia, and others. Igor Hitorsky was murdered by two burglars who broke into his Brooklyn furniture store. The tragedy is that sometime before the murder, his business partner had applied for permission to keep a handgun at the store. Even 4 months after the murder, the former partner had still not heard from the police about the status of his gun permit. Officials in New York City routinely deny gun permits for ordinary citizens and store owners because, as the courts have ruled, they have no greater need for protection than anyone else in the city. In fact, the authorities have even refused to issue permits when courts have ordered them to do so. In 1994, the Clinton administration pushed for a license fee increase of almost 1,000% on gun dealers. According to U.S. News and World Report, the administration was seeking the license fee increase in hopes of driving many of America's 258,000 licensed gun dealers out of business. You cannot license or register a constitutional right. The Supreme Court held in Lamont v. Postmaster General in 1965 that the First Amendment prevents the government from registering purchasers of magazines and newspapers, even if such material is communist political propaganda. Wouldn't it be logical that it would apply to all 10 of the Bill of Rights?
I think that it's sporadic, depending on the states. It's not even. This is why it doesn't work. You can't have a law in Chicago, for instance. You're not allowed to buy for a certain amount of time, or you have to have a background check for 2 days, whatever. Or you can't be a felon. And then they just go across the border like, 20 minutes away? And there are certain places where you can buy the gun. So how's that going to work?
She now has the shovel and is digging. There is nowhere in the United States where a felon can legally purchase a firearm. There are currently, between federal, state, and local jurisdictions, 22,000 gun laws nationwide on the books. As she's digging, I'll keep throwing the dirt back in.
Do you know how many federal laws currently exist in addition to the Second Amendment?
I am not sure. To be honest with you, I do not know.
People like this keep yelling, we need more gun laws. Even if this were true, the people screaming for more gun laws don't even know what laws we do have. How can they therefore be expected to know the best course of legislative action? Obama, Shotgun Joe Biden, and your Royal Highness King Cuomo and the media assault the public with a barrage of loophole stories, leading people to believe that the law is poorly designed or mistakenly permits dangerous activities. People undertake dangerous activities even when they're against the law. They're called criminals. I wonder if she can feel the dirt hitting her in the head.
Have you gone to any meetings regarding gun safety?
Why would I?
Didn't she say people need to be educated? Maybe if she had, I wouldn't be throwing the dirt back in that she's shoveling out. Because like most morons on this subject, she doesn't know her ass from a hot rock.
If you want to protest like you're doing out here, isn't it wise to understand what the opposing side is?
I know what the opposing side is. It's full of fear. It's very fearful, and don't you take one gun away. If you go and if you register my gun tomorrow, you're going to come and pick it up, and the country's going to be run over, and I'm going to be a slave. Or I don't know what the heck they say. I got news for people that think that way. It's already taken over. We have a shadow government. I don't know if people are aware of it, but we do have a shadow government, and the NRA is part of it. Okay? The NRA, the CIA, the FBI, Mossad, in Israel. Check them out, and you'll be able to see the links.
Didn't she say a gun owner she knows isn't mentally stable? I think she may have it backwards. There's no shadow government. They're not hiding anything. They don't have to. We have too many sheep like her who will talk and talk and talk, but will make every attempt to make we the people weaker.
Okay, if you could talk to Wayne LaPierre from the NRA, if you were standing here right now, what is it that you would say to him?
I would say that one day he's going to die, and he's going to remember all of the deaths that are attributed to his behavior in this life. That's what I would say to him. Everyone pays. I believe in karma.
A standard anti-gun moronic statement. It's all Wayne LaPierre's fault. It's not the criminals, it's the gun manufacturers. It's Wayne LaPierre's fault. It's not the corrupt judges, corrupt attorneys, corrupt parole boards, corrupt politicians who let the animals out of prison. Fuck no. It's all Wayne's fault. He did it all. How about it's the person who used the gun's fault, just like it's the drunk driver's fault or the rapist's fault? This argument gets real old and doesn't sound any smarter the more they say it.
Every time our country stands in the path of danger, an instinct seems to summon her finest first, those who truly understand her. When freedom shivers in the cold shadow of true peril, it's always the patriots who first hear the call. When loss of liberty is looming, as it is now, the siren sounds first in the hearts of freedom's vanguard. The smoke in the air of our Concord bridges and Pearl Harbors is always smelled first by the farmers who come from their simple homes to find the fire and fight, because they know that sacred stuff resides in that wooden stock and blued steel. something that gives the most common man the most uncommon of freedoms. When ordinary hands can possess such an extraordinary instrument, that symbolizes the full measure of human dignity and liberty. That's why those 5 words issue an irresistible call to us all, and we muster. So, as we set out this year to defeat the divisive forces that would take freedom away, I want to say those fighting words for everyone within the sound of my voice to hear and to heed. From my cold, dead hands.
I, Andrew Witherspoon, do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same.
Thanks for listening to the Second Amendment for Dummies. You can catch the show every Thursday. Have a good day.